especially in startups, but sometimes in trades too, where you might not be a team that you think is a legitimate contender, but sometimes you see the price tag on a certain player, whether that would be the round you're drafting in or in a trade, and you're thinking to yourself, especially if you're getting close to draft time, rookie draft time, because those veterans are so severely discounted at those times. And, that's something that, we've talked about before, but I think is always worth bringing back up, kind of the life cycle of Dynasty. And I think Eric Kortz made an awesome graphic to kind of like show you when is rookie the cheapest and when is it the most expensive. When's a veteran the cheapest? When's it the most expensive? So if you're at that rookie time and you're looking at it and you're like, man, this guy's just way too cheap. There are times where I will buy that player despite me not thinking I can win this year, knowing that I can get an extra second round pick in 2 months when the season starts, or I can turn that second round pick I traded it for into a first round pick later. Does it work 100% of the time?
Always gamble.
No,
right? Yeah.
All of it is a gamble. Yeah. All of this that we ever talk about, none of it is for sure. But you take calculated and educated guesses on trends of players and what they do, and especially looking at, okay, I see two teams that they could probably use a running back. I'm going to take this guy now, and I'm going to hang it over their heads later and see how much I can get. There are always those kinds of opportunities, especially it seems like at the running back position.
And to your point about everything being a risk and all that kind of stuff, it's just like the stock market. I mean,
100%.
Anything could be risky, and you could always lose your ass or your butt in any single given transaction. But if you stay with the trends, the long-term trend is up. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you got to stay with that. You got to keep going, even if you do have a down trade or a bad trade or something like that doesn't turn out. Keep going. I mean, you got to stick with these trends, stick kind of with your gut on some of these things, and in the long run, it will work out.
So here's a good example of a player that would kind of fall into this category in a specific trade. So I see on here James Conner is a guy that I've kind of looked at as if I need an older player that's not sexy, not exciting, but could put up some really good numbers still this year. James Conner is one of those guys that I've kind of identified.
100%.
Here's a trade where you give up your 26. So 4 years out, you're giving up your 26 second round pick, and you get James Conner and a third back. You know what could happen week 2 of the season? One of these running backs we love blows their knee out, and all of a sudden that team needs a reliable starting running back. Even if worst case scenario, all you get is now you get a 24 second. Well, now you just moved up 2 whole years on that second round pick
and gotten a third back,
and you got a third
in the deal as well.
Yeah. So those kind of little deals, those little moves, sometimes can pay dividends. So yes, typically you want to be a contending team when you're going after these older veteran players, but it's not exclusive to just those kind of teams.
Yeah, 100%. I make those kind of moves all the time. And the time to make those moves is, like Garrett said, it's during, March, April, May, June, July. That's the time to really start making those moves. Definitely, like you said, during the draft. Because there comes times on teams where people literally just want to get that player. Yeah, I could not tell you how many trades I've made, and people are like, that's all you got him for. It's because it's somebody like, when you see somebody out there and they put like more than one message out there, like, hey, I'm trying to trade this guy. For the most part, a lot of times, those people just want them off your roster.
Yeah, they're thinking about cutting them, and they just want to get something.
When Christian McCaffrey was hurt, I got him before last year started a first, just a first straight up.
Well,
because he wanted to get rid of him off his roster.
He wasn't going to cut him, but yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't going to cut him, but there's always maneuvers out there, and sometimes depends on the level of player. But a third, and I think James Conner is a great. He's on my list of if you need a veteran running back, James Conner is probably the cheapest. Best
potential RB1 that you could have. Yeah, here's another one, James Conner for Rashee Rice. You're drafting Rashee Rice in the middle of the third, probably? Early third?
Yeah.
Second.
He could go back half second.
Maybe, but either way, you're paying a late second to early third, of value. You can easily get way more than that in season for a guy like James Conner.
100%. And that's a move like what Garrett said. It's like you're just thinking ahead, can I move up just a little bit here? Can I use that? Can I give a third and James Conner and get somebody's first who's a contender? Mm-hmm. And as long as you have the time to be patient and this player can stay healthy, that usually does work out in your favor unless they fall on their face. But like Garrett said, you're picking and choosing who these players are. I think James Conner is a great one for that exact same move that you said, or if you're a contender.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about veteran running backs, I think those guys are easy to buy because like the cliff falls off so quick. So once they get 28, like they're almost a second rounder and get it done. I think James Conner get bought for a second rounder.
Yeah.
And you're looking again at a running back whose team is in complete disarray. Most likely, Kyler Murray won't be back until week 8, somewhere around there. So it's going to be Colt McCoy in there. Their receiving core, no more DeAndre Hopkins. We don't even know if Zach Ertz going to start the season. They got Trey McBride, who's young. They got Rondale Moore.
They didn't draft a running back.
And they did not bring in a single running back. And you're talking about a player that, he was pretty much banged up last year. But when he came back later in the year, like I think it was almost halfway through the year, like right around week 9 or so, like he had like a decent amount of rushing yards.
He was an RB1 on points per game. He was an RB1 last year. Yeah. So and it's a defensive-minded head coach.
Right.
So often when you have those defensive-minded head coaches, they tend to run the ball a little more ball control, and they want to win with their defense. So there's a lot setting up for him specifically. But we're not even necessarily just talking about James Conner. We're talking about the concept of getting these veteran players in general.
He just, when you said his name,
fits perfectly.
He's my favorite contender by running back. A true probably workhorse running back, more so than I'd say probably 3/4 of the rest of the league. Like the role that he's going to carry is going to be so much different than most of the other running backs. Like a true bell cow running back. But then he falls, and when I say I think he's cheaper when you throw other names in that category, right? Like Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. Yeah. You mentioned Nick Chubb earlier. These guys that can be had for, Nick Chubb is going to cost you a first and probably a second. Yep. I think that's good value. Joe Mixon's borderline. You probably get him for maybe a couple seconds and a young guy.
Especially with all the contract stuff coming out about him.
And still the rumors that he might not.
His ADP is running back 21, Joe Mixon's, and he's the 81st player off the board. Nick Chubb's is running back 16 dynasty-wise, running back 60, or player 60 off the board.
Yeah, and where's Joe Mixon?
81 and running back 21.
So he's down there pretty low as well. And you said there's a lot of worried about. And out of all the guys, Joe Mixon's the youngest. He's 26. So he's youngest out of all those guys. Aaron Jones was still super efficient last year. He had over 1,500 yards rushing. Had I can't remember how many touchdowns he had, but he was another very solid run back that can be had easily for a first.
Aaron Jones had 7 total, two rushing and 5.
One that's being treated like an old guy. He's actually below Joe Mixon, and same range as Dalvin Cook. He's only one spot ahead of Dalvin Cook. Miles Sanders, and he's not even as old as those guys. He's running back 22 off the board, pick 86, and I think he's going to get a stupid amount of work this year.
Stupid amount of work. He can be had probably for a first.
Maybe even 2 seconds.
I can't imagine.
He's going behind Joe Mixon. If we think Joe Mixon can go for 2 seconds, he's being drafted behind Joe Mixon.